Each of us are going to take 5 minutes or so to give you a brief bio of where we've been before and what we do here, as well as our involvement in the zero emissions program here. I'm gonna start to my left, and we're gonna work our way down this way, and I'll go last. But each of us has an area of zero emissions that we know more than a little bit about, enough to be dangerous on. So I'm going to start. You've got the bio. You should have the bio sheet in front of you, so you should have read the brief bio. They may give you a little bit more than that now. So I'm going to start with Lisa Schaefer to my left, who's in our performance and strategy group, and it works on trying to retrofit our bases to handle these zero-emission buses and also build new ones. Lisa.
Thank you, Pete. Is it on? All right. Thank you for the introduction. Again, my name is Lisa Schaefer. I'm a planner in the strategy and performance group, particularly the strategic planning side. So I've been part of developing our long-range plan and our policy guidance and all that kind of stuff. I got the opportunity to first get involved in this as part of the technical review panel for the feasibility study that Metro did, which prompted us to move down the path of battery buses. And my role at that point was really seeing how could battery buses fit into our vision of our future network. Our long-range plan goes out to 2040. We have a very, robust enhancement of servicing for that. Does a battery bus, does it have the range, does it have the size that we can work with in terms of our future vision? And I have the opportunity to continue to be involved because now one of our next steps to move towards our future vision is we're developing a facility master plan. So a big part of that facility master plan is thinking about what our facilities are going to need to be in the future, and particularly bus bases. And so as we are just about to launch this facility master planning effort, and right now, just to give a little background on our system, we have 7 bus bases, all of which right now are really at their capacity for the fleet we have right now. Metro Connects, which is our long-range vision, is really setting up us to grow. Really, it's a really ambitious vision. And so as we're looking at growth, we have to look at the base capacity to support that. Well, then you add in, what does it take to support a battery bus fleet? So those are the kinds of questions that I'm just now starting to think about as we prepare for our long-range vision. So in a way, really what I'm doing is learning all the questions that you have to think about. There's so many different things to think about as we move towards a battery bus. And so some of it, yes, is transitioning our existing bases, and then also thinking about what's a future base look like. If we're planning to build a base right now, do we build it so it's ready to go all electric from the beginning? What does it mean to have a base that's all electric? How does the infrastructure fit? And as we're retrofitting our existing bases that are already over capacity, the infrastructure that supports battery buses takes up a little bit more room. So maybe we can actually fit fewer buses on a base that we have right now. So those are all challenges that we're starting to think about. What does it look like to charge buses? Do we have to move things around at night? Do we need different staff? Right now we have a fuel wash cycle where buses go in, get washed and fueled, and then they're parked for the night. Well, if buses need longer charging, do they plug in at night? Do you have to shuffle them around? I don't know. All these kind of things are things that I'm just learning to ask questions about and that we're thinking about. And another one is what happens if there's a major power outage? So I'm just identifying lots of questions that we have, but it's an exciting thing to be a part of. I think that's about it in terms of my role. And it's just lots of challenging things to think about and lots of fun. I think I'll pass it on to Leo.
Well, before we do that, Lisa, how long have you been with Metro?
I've actually been with King County for about 20 years, in Metro for about 12. And my background, I started in service planning, but I've always been sort of on the more policy and long-range planning side. Thank you.
Okay, so now we got Leo Rachanek, who's part of our procurement team and has been instrumental in getting our first Proterra buses here. And so his field of expertise is bus procurement. Leo.
Good afternoon. I'm one of 2 vehicle procurement administrators at King County, working for our superintendent, Steve Polakar. I've been with the county and Metro for 22 years about now. And I've been tasked with managing the first battery bus procurement at Metro, along with our bus procurement team of in-house technical experts. We've been working on battery electric vehicles and infrastructure since 2011. Our first battery contract was awarded to Proterra on August 1st in 2014, and we installed our first fast charger, which is the one at Eastgate you went to visit, in September of 2015. And the first 3 battery buses went into revenue service in February of 2016. So they've been about a year and a half in service out there. Challenges. One of our major challenges was design of the vehicle. King County Metro, as most transit agencies, has a list of preferred equipment and features that we use on the rest of our diesel hybrid fleet. However, forcing use of this equipment and features such as heavy-duty seats, air conditioning, towing requirements, etc., has caused problems with battery bus design. So the bus we selected was purpose-built using the lightest and most efficient equipment available as part of our builder's research and development program for designing their bus. But by forcing our standard equipment on the battery bus, we ended up losing most of the weight savings. But we would have done that to every bus builder out there anyway, so it's comparable difference. Anyways, another challenge was bus operator acceptance of the vehicle. And because we chose a bus builder that's new to the industry, they were also new to King County Metro. They've not worked with us and known where we want to put our coffee cup for the operator. It's a key thing. And, this was an issue for us, a big issue. And we've tried to stress to our operators that this was a R&D project, a development of new technology for the first 3 buses. And we ended up working with Proterra doing what they called a buck review. They created a buck, which is a full-size driver station. They brought it over here. We had reviews. We had almost 300 comments documented that ended up being change orders for the next order. And it made a tremendous improvement to the driver's station. It's what you saw on the bus out there, not the extended range bus, but the other one. It has a new driver's station. It has new cabinets for electrical components. It has a relocated mirror, new steering column, the works. I mean, we went through that bus in detail in the driver's area to make it more acceptable to the operators. And that was one of our big challenges. So, charging, bus charging. What we have seen, and our technical expert may confirm or deny later, we need to transfer power into our buses as quickly as possible and balance that, yes, with demand charges. And the important thing was not delaying service, okay? We have layover times that are often used as schedule makeup, and you can't do that with a battery bus. It has to stop there. If it's 10 minutes, if it's 8 minutes, our typical charge time is 8 or 9 minutes, but you can't use that for schedule makeup. So that's been an issue for route planning, service development, and so forth. I think the attitude is changing, that they want to give operators the time at layovers, to use the comfort station and so forth. And I see that as improving with time. But also the new extended range technology, which allows you to charge at the base somewhat slower, that's going to help too. So it'll be like Danny was saying from New York, it's a balance between base charging at night and in-service charging during the day. So that was another of our challenges there. think infrastructure and vehicle capital costs. I did the first large fleet procurement of hybrid buses back in 2003 and 4. And our premium at that point using Allison's system was about $200,000 a bus. But the battery bus premium is less than $200,000. So we're starting to narrow the gap on the new technology, but it's still increasing in cost quite a bit. And that's not including the charge infrastructure, of course. Well, is that cost effective? You know, that's why we're still testing vehicles. We're doing this extended range test. We're seeing the impact on schedules. We're seeing the impact on charging, on demand rates, and so forth. It's still not a done deal yet. So anyway, that's probably it. Okay.
Thanks, Leo.
Okay.
And thanks for all your work getting us started on this. I know it's been, it's always tough to blaze the trail, and we're following in the trail that you started to blaze. Now we've got Katie Chalmers here from Service Planning. She's a superintendent supervisor there, and she deals with the daily and monthly and yearly headaches of changing service is it twice a year or 3 times a year? I can't remember where we are now, but it's a really big job. And so Katie's going to talk to us about the impacts on service planning. Thanks, Katie.
Hi, I'm Katie Chalmers. I've been at King County about 10 years and currently supervise the service planning group. So when we started to hear about battery buses coming, the question was kind of like, well, where should we put the buses? Of course, that's really exciting. Where are they going to go? So, the question has evolved from sort of where do these couple buses go to what does it mean for a whole system to go battery? And really the discussions that we've had in planning to this point have been focused on kind of what are the first parts of the system to go with battery buses. And that, that depends on the capabilities of the bus. How far can it go? Where can we actually put a charger? Which of our routes have enough recovery time that they could actually spend and get the charge? Which of our schedules, allow it where the bus is actually going a short enough distance to allow it to use these, the fast charge system, which has more limitations in terms of impacting service planning. So those are the types of questions that first came up when we were talking about a couple of these buses. And the system that you saw on the east side was a place where we had a Metro-owned property to locate a charger, as well as a park and ride that has room to put the infrastructure in. There's a large number of routes that all connect at the park and ride, so that sort of gave us a wider footprint of considering like how many routes that the bus could run on at any time. And as well, we did look to our futures, our Metro Connect's vision to say, okay, we want to put these buses in a place that we know that we can use them in the long run and that we're not going to do some sort of service change or restructure that then, oops, the battery buses no longer work. So that was definitely an interesting discussion in terms of locating the first places in the county that these buses would go. There's certainly other considerations that come into play as the system grows. These buses are politically popular, so lots of our elected officials want them to be in their city and in their, serving their constituents. So as we look at a broader implementation, we've looked at things like the benefit of having all the buses operating out of one base and serving routes in a concentrated area versus sort of spreading the wealth around the system, because they do have a lot of benefits in terms of operational, like, zero emissions, quiet. There's all these factors that people want them in their community when compared with even a hybrid bus. So as we look at broader implementation, we've had to sort of we have our technical lens of what works in a given service, but also to start to insert some policy considerations of how we deploy these buses in a way that's equitable. We've had discussions about communities in King County that are especially impacted by emissions, and do we try and put some of these buses into those communities first or next? And so those are some of the considerations that as a planning group we've had to work through. But our initial reaction is, our initial thoughts are just, can this bus do what we would normally ask a diesel or a hybrid bus to do? And the answer is no, to start with. The fast charge bus does have constraints. So we've actually gone back and we've had to redesign some of our service slightly and schedule it slightly differently to make sure that it works. As we get into talking about buses with longer ranges, and then it starts to look like a bus that's much more similar to a hybrid bus. So from a planning perspective, the more similar the bus becomes technology-wise to a hybrid or a diesel bus, the less as service planning we get involved in sort of that day-to-day, where should they go? Because at some point the range becomes long enough that they can go everywhere. One of the big considerations and challenges that we've had is that we have a large amount of service that operates in articulated 60-foot buses. And so pushing the industry and getting a 60-foot bus that could work is key to making this work for Metro in the long run. And there's certain communities that would never see a battery bus unless there's a 60-foot bus available. And so that's another consideration, that as planners, we want the bus to be able to meet the needs that we see from ridership, from reliability, from a community perspective. We don't necessarily, from service planning perspective, want to be designing our service to meet the needs of a certain vehicle. So there's a little bit of a push and pull there, where I said we have actually changed some of our schedules slightly for the fast charge buses. We had to add some time into the schedules for layover. But in the long run, as we look towards the future with more and more of these buses, I think it becomes just more part of all of the Metro fleet that we can incorporate. And as it becomes less of a niche fleet and more of just part of our day-to-day, the specific involvement of planners in deciding where they go I expect will diminish. But certainly in these first few years, and as we talk about how we get there from where we are now to a larger fleet of battery buses, service planning has been very involved in those discussions as well, and working really closely with all the folks up here, because we don't want the buses to break down. We don't want to get the complaints. We want to make sure that the buses are able to provide the service that we're ultimately here to provide. So there's a lot of challenges in terms of technical and political and other considerations that we've had to work through. But it is really exciting, and I think ultimately the direction we're headed in will provide a better product or a better service for our riders that hopefully becomes attractive for people who are on the bus, as well as for communities that they might not be on the bus, but they can get behind transit service more if you have a clean, quiet, environmentally friendly vehicle doing that service.
Thanks a lot, Katie. So now we've got George Stites, who is the head of our testers, our fleet engineers, the people who have to check out all aspects of this new technology for us. And it's his team that provided the buses today and took us out to the charging station. So George, you're on.
Okay. I've been working in vehicle maintenance for over 40 years now. I've been with the county for over 30 years. The role of my office is testing new bus technologies, testing new components, improving vehicle reliability, and looking for ways to improve the environment. I started, one of the main tasks I was assigned in 2002 was to see if we could put a 60-foot vehicle, a hybrid vehicle, into service through our downtown transit tunnel. The tunnel itself, we don't want to run a diesel engine in, so we had to work with a builder to see if we could get the hybrid bus to run through the tunnel in battery-only mode. The tunnel is 1.3 miles, and it's uphill one direction and downhill the other. So we had to do some testing and research with a hybrid bus to see if we could do that. As part of that test, once we validated that we could get through the tunnel on battery, we had to validate if the bus could actually work in our service area. So when I do that with a new vehicle, I load that bus with water barrels to simulate load, and I test it. And I tested the bus for 90 days and drove it for 36,000 miles. I didn't do that myself, but anyway, so when I got done with that, we said hybrid buses will work in King County, but in my opinion at that time, a hybrid bus was only going to be a bridge between the diesel bus that we had and the battery buses of the future. When I got assigned to start looking at the battery bus to do similar type testing, that was about 2004, 2005, when I first started looking at battery vehicles. At that point in time, the range of a battery vehicle was probably around 20 miles. That's about all you could get. As we got into the procurement process, we were looking at the Proterra bus. One thing, it was one of the few buses that was out there. If we had a fast charge and we looked at a fast charge bus, if we could start putting together a network of those buses on a kind of a hub and spoke network, you could probably go just from one charger to the next, and you could probably have a pretty good system out there. We also wanted to look at the impact on vehicle maintenance, on servicing the bus. Can I find a battery bus that's going to be able to be serviced in the same length of time as what a diesel bus is, or a hybrid bus? I did a similar test. I loaded the Proterra with water barrels. I got a little carried away. I had a simulated load of 97 passengers on the bus, similar to that you rode this morning. I ran that bus for
More than 100.
a little over 90 days. I think it was like 95, and put 30,000 miles on that bus. But riding in our service, in our terrain, in our environment, now, you've been told that that bus will go 25 miles. It'll actually go about 32 to 33 miles on a single charge and still get back to the charger. But as part of my testing, I need to make sure that that bus has enough cushion on the routes that I let the bus go on. When we have the accidents, the traffic jams, the whatever else comes up in front of a driver, that bus is going to have enough reserve capacity to get back to the charger. So that's why the routes that they're running today are about 18 and a half miles. That's part of the planning that I have to do when I give my recommendation to the fleet planning panel. This is a bus I think we can use. So with that, my next task is to look at the challenges that we have to face. Now, for vehicle maintenance, a fast charge bus to me looks great. I can put 1 or 2 or 4 fast chargers at a base, and I can run them through my servicing cycle and come pretty close to what the diesel bus is. If I talk to my colleagues down the road, or down the line here, that's exactly not what they want at all. They want the long-range bus that they can just put in service and they don't have to make their adjustments. As we start talking to each other, we realize everybody's going to have to give and take a little bit. And I personally believe that a mixture of the two is what King County will end up with. I don't know for sure, but that's what I suspect. As the time has passed, we've also seen a huge change in battery technology. 15 years ago, I never would have thought that you could have charged a battery from 20% to 100% in under 10 minutes. The battery just heats up and you can't do that. Well, we've been proven wrong. It can do that. The long-range bus we had out there today can do both. So next week, I get that long-range bus to start some additional testing for a month to help us make a determination, do we want to buy another 12 buses as fast charge, or do we want to make them long-range? The capability of having a plug-in bus that you can have charged to 100% and put out on a run and then do that opportunity charging en route. When it comes in contact with that charger, it's on a layover to get a boost of like 20 to 30% of its battery capability. How far can I go with that? Now, we do have a test coming up that's going to look at 140 miles, but I've already done almost 190 miles with that bus and still have a state of charge left that's over 25%. So these are some of the things that I've got to do with the testing and the recommendations that I have to make to the Fleet Planning Committee. Like Danny said, one question I get asked all the time is standardization of charging. We're not terribly far off with the plug-in charging, but in my opinion, we're quite a ways off with the fast charge, any overhead type charging. There's different camps out there, there's different ways, and you can wait until it happens, but you might wait 5 years, or you might wait 10 years, or it might be next year. I don't know, but that's something an agency really has to consider, because it's a big commitment, whatever direction you go. And as Pete always tells me, we don't want to buy the beta. We want to get the VHS machine in the buses.
Well, they're sort of obsolete now too, George.
Well, I'm getting obsolete myself, so what the heck. And then it comes down to the scalability. We've got 3 buses. We can run them. We don't have a fast charger at the operating base. We just have a 50 kW small shop charger. We can do that. We've been doing it for 1.5 years. But when we start our next phase and we get up around 20 buses, I got to have a fast charger at the base. We can't do that, run that service at 100% on those routes without that fast charger. What's that going to do to my staffing levels? What's that going to do to my servicing time? Now, if we go with the extended range bus, like Lisa said, we're at about 103, 105% capacity right now in our parking. And the estimates that I get, if we were to do extended range buses across the street at the base across the street from me, I'd lose about 5% of my parking just to get the charging infrastructure in there. What's the property going to do with that, or how are they going to overcome that hurdle? So these are all questions that I get asked a lot, my colleagues get asked a lot, and I don't know that anybody has an answer yet, but that's what we're working towards. And in the conclusion of my statement, the thing that I really feel fortunate about is that I work for an agency that's given me the opportunity to do some of this testing, because it's fun. I really enjoy it. I get to meet a lot of great people. Some of the comments and input that I've given, I see changes in the industry, and I really feel fortunate that I don't know if we're on the leading edge of the bleeding edge some days, but it's been fun doing this.
Thanks a lot, George. We've started on the east side, and Puget Sound Energy is the utility that we've been working with on that primarily. So they've got a little bit more experience with us, maybe more than a little bit more experience. And the guy that's been our point person is Andrew Lightfoot on the end of the table here. So he's been involved with the Eastgate Park and Ride charger that you saw, and we're going to put 5 of those in place with a gantry system over the next year. And then we're going to put a fast charger at the base that George was talking about. It was really important. So, Andrew, you're up.
Thanks, Pete. So yeah, my name is Andrew Lightfoot. I'm a major account executive at Puget Sound Energy, and my role is basically to manage some of our largest commercial and industrial customers in our service territory, and one of which has been King County. My interactions with King County, for the most part regarding electric buses, like Pete mentioned, has been the Eastgate Park and Ride, Bellevue Base, which he just mentioned, as well as looking at the Kirkland and Redmond transit centers. And those are a little further along in terms of getting installed or actually getting implemented, but we always appreciate the heads up in terms of looking to provide service. In terms of my background, I've been at Puget Sound Energy for 9 years. 8 of those years, I was a transmission and distribution engineer, and so have some experience on the operations side, and then this past year have moved into the major account side. So in terms of zero emission, I'm going to talk from a little higher level regarding Puget Sound Energy. my thought on zero emission, one of the biggest challenges I see for PSE is that we are constantly looking to develop our generation portfolio. We are the largest utility in Washington with 1.1 million customers. And lately, or recently, we've seen a pretty big push from our customer base on incorporating renewable energy into our generation portfolio. So looking for more generation, wind, solar, those types of renewable generation that we own personally. And so some of the initiatives that we have recently implemented that go towards zero emission include the Green Direct program, which allows our customers to purchase green energy directly. And Dow Constantine, Executive Constantine, earlier mentioned the wind farm that is going in southeast Washington, or excuse me, southwest Washington. And that wind farm is being partially or pretty much completely funded by proceeds from the Green Energy program, our customers who have committed, because their dollars essentially pass right through and pay for that wind farm to be installed. We also have the Solar Choice program, a similar program to Green Direct, but just with solar. Customers can choose to pay a little more of a premium on their bill, but those dollars will be going towards funding solar energy programs. We also have, this actually recently happened the past week, we reached a settlement regarding our Colstrip coal plant. We're going to be closing 2 of the 4 units for Colstrip by 2022, with the other 2 units eventually looking like to be closed here at a later scheduled date. So the other part of that settlement was also that we have set up a funding plan for the town of Colstrip to make sure that their economy doesn't take a huge hit from the closing half of the plant down, essentially. And finally, we have the electric vehicle charging station program. Now, this program is in its infancy, but we are looking and working with the UTC on basically implementing electric vehicle charging stations owned and operated by PSE. Customers, similar to a gas station, would roll up, pay for a certain price to charge their vehicle, and this basically comes with the idea of zero emission. Electric buses, electric vehicles, it's become more of a reality, and we are doing our best to provide capacity and service to customers who are looking to invest in that kind of technology. UTC, the Utilities and Transportation Commission, PSE is a regulated utility, so basically every I would say initiative, tariff, regulation, we has to go through them. It's part of the sort of checks and balances process of being a regulated utility.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it. So I'm last. I'm the infrastructure guy. I spent 24 years in the U.S. Navy Civil Engineer Corps doing a different kind of infrastructure, but it's sort of all the same. And after I did that, I went to work for NATO for 3 years and built infrastructure primarily in Afghanistan, but a little bit in Iraq and the Balkans. And then I went to work for Amazon. Those are like dog years at Amazon. So 3 years times 7, that was like 21 years. And I've been here for 6 years. And I've only really been in this job for about 1.5 years now. I worked in design and construction before, and so I have a little bit of background in infrastructure, and I've got this great team that I can lean on for all this other stuff. So the big challenge that I keep hearing from Steve Polakar is it's like real estate. Location, location, location. It's infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. In order to stay ahead of battery bus receipts, we got to get as far ahead of that as we can. And it's difficult because you've heard from George and others that the infrastructure for charging battery electric buses is not quite standard yet. In some areas, it's more standard for slow charging than it is for fast charging. So we're having to take a little bit of risk. And I really don't want the 8-track tape version or the Betamax version if I could avoid it. However, we do know that we'll need infrastructure increases from our utility providers. We're going to have to jack up the distribution way higher than what we currently have, and that's always going to be a need, no matter what the infrastructure looks like. So we're working on that and trying to plan with our partners at the utilities to make sure that we bring in the right amount and try to model what it's going to look like in terms of how much power and how much period of time. There's worst case scenarios, and that's what we tend to start with. Every bus needs to be charged at the same time from a 0 state of charge to 100% state of charge in the same 4-hour period. That's not actually very likely. However, it is a place to start to try to get those numbers. So we'll start with those things and work forward. So one of the biggest challenges with infrastructure is in a big city like this, not as big as Danny's New York City, there are lots and lots of regulations to go through, lots of stakeholder groups to go through, lots of permits to get, lots of questions that are being asked, and that all takes time. And we want to move quickly on this. And so one of the things that we have to do with the infrastructure is reach out to the community. We've done that a little bit, and I've gone around talking to a number of different people in the various jurisdictions. There's a committee that deals with transportation here at King County that I've briefed. I've talked to the skate board, which is the South County area transit board, I think it is. And, let them know that we're coming and we want to do this, and we'd like to have a greased path if we can. It's not ever going to be quite that easy, but that's really what's required, is to, I guess, reach out, inform, educate, ask what people's concerns are to make sure that people are ready for it to the extent that they can be, and that you can help answer questions to make it easier for them to let you do what you need to do. So public perception is also a really important thing. People look at these chargers and go, well, are they safe? Well, somebody asked me today when we were out there charging, is it safe for people with pacemakers? I don't know the answer to that. I think it is, but those are the kinds of questions that come up. What about graffiti on these things? How are you going to keep these things clean? How are you going to keep people from climbing on them or trying to get in them? Those are all different things that we need to worry about. And then the space and workflow constraints at our bases. When we build this infrastructure, we have to be able to continue to do the vehicle maintenance. We have to be able to dispatch the buses. We have to do that as efficiently as we can. We have to look at what the training requirements are or retraining requirements are. We have to look at what is the distribution of labor and how that's going to change. George said, hey, I like these fast charge buses. I can get them through the fuel and wash cycle in the same amount of time I can with a diesel hybrid. But that's not what Katie likes. Katie wants to have one that, will behave much more like a diesel hybrid. So we're going to have to work through those things, and those are all part of the considerations when we're trying to do an assessment of where the infrastructure is going to go, design it, and construct it. So it's a challenge, but it, like George said, it is a whole bunch of fun, and people are excited about this. And when I get to work with all these people within Metro, sometimes people are more excited about some things than they are about other things. This is one of the things people are really excited about. So it's really fun to work on this stuff, but it is a challenge. And then having colleagues like you that I can call and ask questions of, you can call and ask me questions, and I end up learning more from you than you do from me probably. So that it's great to have a community. Allison Wiley runs a monthly call. Allison's out of Oregon Department of Transportation, and I've been on it for, 4 or 5 months now. And we don't always get on there every month, and we don't ever have an agenda that I know of, but we always have things to talk about. Ernie Turner's in the room, he's on that. Matt Brown from Stanford University is on that. We learn from one another. So having that community and having, resources to go talk to about that is really helpful.